Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 9 days, the game against Michigan in 93 days. For the second day in a row, we're doing it live. I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We just got a chance to talk to Brian Hartline, the wide receivers, Parker Fleming, a couple of the specialists. This is always, this is the last interview session before, this is it. This is the end of fall camp media access, essentially. So, it sort of is just starting to feel like, single digits down, countdown to the Notre Dame game. It is really starting to feel a little bit real in here.
Yeah, especially when you start covering the team, the end of the week hits, and then it's like, once this week is over, it's game week. And right now, as soon as we're done with this, this week is essentially over in terms of talking to players, talking to coaches. And I just want to correct you. We only talked to one specialist.
Oh, that's true.
It was Bradley Robinson. But I did ask him, Tom, the question that I've always wanted to ask a long snapper. I said, Bradley, if you were to go down and make a tackle on a punt, but get ejected for targeting, how much trouble would you get into? And he said Ryan Day would probably be pretty livid about that situation. So,
and I feel like people don't necessarily. You got to talk to him a lot longer than I was over there. I was there are 3 tables, and so we're kind of bouncing around between a couple different spots. I feel like long snappers are a little bit underappreciated, where you see them snap the ball. I don't know that people necessarily realize that dude is generally the first guy down the field. So often on punts, you see the ball dropping and there's one guy in his face, and it's not necessarily one of the gunners, it's the long snapper, and that's because you can't have someone right over him, so there's reasons for it. But yes, he is. That is legitimately, you could get a targeting penalty if you really lit someone up on a punt.
He said having Chris Olave and Jamison Williams his first year, those guys, it's hard to beat them down the field. But he's good to talk to. He's a really, really smart guy. Obviously, a lot of degrees, a lot of letters. Works 30 hours a week doing research stuff for other further things. It was, NBA, what? I don't know, Masters of Doctors? I don't know. It's just crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, this is his 7th year. He is, boy, I did not think we'd be leading with Bradley Robinson, but here we go. We're going to roll with it.
I've ruined the show for you, Tom. I've taken over.
See, I actually prefer, the specialists are always one of my favorite interview sessions, because they just have really interesting and different stuff to talk about.
They only talk once a year, and so when you get an opportunity.
It's always fun, yeah. And, this is his 7th year. He announced that he was coming back for his 7th year with a Tommy Boy quote. Lots of people go to college for 7 years. Yes, they're called doctors. He actually was pre-med. He was actually thinking he might be a doctor. He said that door is now kind of closed, but he is potentially, he might be working on his PhD before all is said and done. So, he said that's a kind of doctor. So that's, he is, a very smart, very interesting guy. He was talking about his interests, and it's, he likes to read. He and his dad were reading books, and his dad wanted him to finish books so he could send books, share the books with his dad.
He's demanding fathers. He's demanding helicopter sports dads.
He was talking about, he likes to watch, he likes to watch movies, and he was talking about, the new Top Gun movie's coming out on streaming, so I'll probably catch that soon. And it's you really probably don't have a lot of free time between being a football player, being going for your PhD, working 30 hours. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, the reason why his schedule was brought up, because somebody asked, you've seen Ohio State's the football Twitter account posting first day of school things 17th grade or whatever, and they're like, why didn't we see a 19th grade? He's like, because I'd already been at work for an hour and a half when they started texting people can you come in?
Yeah, it is he's definitely one of the more interesting characters on the football team for sure, and also one of the more underappreciated. I always feel like long snappers. You probably have not spent a lot of time thinking about Bradley Robinson this year, and that's because Bradley Robinson has just very consistently been very good at his job, and not, you only notice long snappers when something goes really terribly wrong. When Sean McDonough's voice, cracks and there's trouble with the snap, and you have really not noticed Bradley Robinson. You really didn't notice Liam McCullough beforehand. That has just sort of been quiet excellence for Ohio State for quite a while.
Long snapper, you.
It's not as crazy as you might think.
Or LSU.
Yeah, Liam McCullough has been drawing a NFL paycheck for a while, so it's not as crazy as you might think. All right, so let's move on real quickly. We do need to touch on the wide receivers. A little bit of a story around this year's team. Brian Hartline was asked about his recruiting. How on earth can Brian Hartline recruit as well as Brian Hartline does? What's bullet point one in your recruiting plan? He said, you just got to be yourself. And Jackson Smith-Njigba talked about that later. Like, you've got to, he is who he is, and you know what you're getting when you sign up. Which is, that feels like that's more important now than it has ever been in college with the transfer portal. And if you sell someone a bill of goods, it is not hard for them to hit the bricks. We have seen college players leave before they even get to the first game of their careers. It is not as easy to trap someone in at a college as it used to be. So that is probably one of the reasons why you see guys not just coming to play for Brian Hartline, but staying to play for Brian Hartline. Hartline also said, guys think they know what it means to work before they get here, and it's like, no, they don't. No, they don't actually know what it's going to take to work there. Jackson Smith-Njigba talked about that, where the work ethic in that room, in that wide receiver room, is just above and beyond anything else, and it's so competitive. And that was one of the reasons he wanted to come to Ohio State. It was like he didn't want an easy path to the playing field because he knew the other guys around him were going to push him. That is, and that's one of those things that you can hear lots of people talk about culture and how they work hard and all that kind of stuff. You have seen that play out on the field for Ohio State.
Yeah, and talking to Jaden Ballard, he was saying some of the same stuff. I asked him, like, where have you grown the most? And he said it's route running, and it's coming back and working with everybody on routes and watching, and working on it, steps and all of this stuff where it's there's this peer pressure type of thing, but it's the culture. It's that's the better word for it, because, everybody wants to play, everybody wants to get better. And when you're in the same room with Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Emeka Egbuka, like Julian Fleming, like, if you're going to take days off, you're going to fall way behind. And then there's another class coming up, and we can talk about Caleb Brown later. But
Yeah, we'll get to the younger guys in a minute, but one of the other pieces of the culture in that wide receiver room is guys playing multiple positions and being prepared to play everywhere. That's something Hartline talked about. That's something that Jaden Ballard talked about. You've got to be able to play the X, the H, Z. You got to, and Jaden Ballard was asked, do you have a favorite? And yes, he has a favorite. Guess what? The guy who everyone always comes to Devin Smith. Guess what? He likes playing Z. What a surprise! But you do, and Hartline talked about the fact that they have 6 guys right now who, I think are in the circle of trust. Guys they feel are ready to contribute now, who are going to be in, whatever that rotation ends up being. And the fact that they can play multiple spots means they really are going to get those guys on the field. Tony, I'm going to put you on the spot. I will spot you the fact that Cam Babb is not one of the 6, but only because he's hurt. So who are the 6 guys in Brian Hartline's circle of trust right now?
Well, it's going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba, Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison, Julian Fleming, Jaden Ballard, and Xavier Johnson.
Correct. Ding, ding, ding.
I talked to Xavier Johnson, so I kind of...
There you go.
Plus,
yes.
they brought him out, so that's usually a good sign.
That is usually, yes. We talk about sort of, reading the room in terms of reading the tea leaves in terms of, what can you learn just from who you're talking to? It's like, well, yes, we talked to 6 wide receivers tonight. You're not going to believe it, but those are the 6 guys who, well, we talked to 7. Cam Babb being the 7th one. Cam Babb is, seems like he's in good spirits. Jackson Smith-Njigba talked about how he comes to Cam Babb comes to the facility every day with a smile on his face, setting a good example, being a good leader. Like that's how you're a captain. That's how you're the block O guy.
We talked about it yesterday when we saw him running on the field. It's like he's just got a big smile. And talking to him today, I said, it was a bummer, but you can't let it get you down, and because you still have to recover. You still have to work back, and if you don't do it with a good attitude, it's not going to be effective. And I talked to, who did we talk to about that yesterday? One of the DBs, Lathan Ransom. Like, you have to have the positive mental health aspect of it to be able to get the most out of the physical rehab. And so that they really focus on that. And when you got a guy like Cam Babb who brings everybody up, including himself, but then others also help him because he's helped them along the way too.
One of the big topics tonight was Marvin Harrison Jr., who you've probably heard some positive things about over the last couple of years. He was named number 2 on the Freaks list. I believe that was the Bruce Feldman Freaks list that he puts out every year. Just the most, no, human beings cannot actually do that. That's not possible kind of ranking. He was number 2. Brian Hartline's exact quote, "Marvin's not that good of an athlete." And DeJuan Jones was walking past and stopped as he heard that. It was like, that's cap, which is the way the kids say. calling shenanigans. Yes, Brian Hartland was in fact joking. He does in fact think that Marvin Harrison is an okay athlete, but said honestly, like the athleticism only gets you to a certain point. And he talked about his mental makeup, his work ethic, how he's worked. That's what sold Hartline when he was a high school prospect. That's why he's turned into what he is sort of threatening to turn into in the this fall. Just Hartline just said his work ethic was off the charts, and it's like, okay, so where does he get the work ethic from? And everyone will say,
his mom. I ruined it for you again. They're going to say his dad.
They are going to say his dad, and they're going to be partially right. He talked about, obviously you learn a lot from having an NFL Hall of Famer as a dad. Especially playing the same position. There's a lot you're going to pick up, directly and also just sort of through osmosis. But then he was also talking about his mom, and his mom gets up at 4:30 in the morning every day to go to work. And someone said, you're married to an NFL Hall of Famer. You don't actually have to do that. And he said, she wants her own. She wants her, she doesn't want to just live off of what her husband did. She wants to do it on her own. And so what does she do? She gets up and she goes, and she's a trainer for a gym, for a women's gym. So she trains women, and it's like, and she's a doctor too. It's like, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, what? So yes, so the parent who no one thinks about with Marvin Harrison, she's an amazing woman who really believes in working for yourself and doing it for yourself. Also, side note, is a doctor. Like, I'm sorry, what? Did I hear that right? What?
Here I thought she just wanted to get out of the house because the husband is retired and he just, he's just home all the time.
It was just like this very casual, like, oh, and she's an astronaut. Like, what?
Well, and that gives you some insight into how normal that type of work is to him, and the work to get there. It's just like, that's every day. What, your parents aren't doctors and NFL Hall of Famers?
Yeah, and you may have seen a video earlier this summer of him shooting a ball through, some specialized. It's not a jugs machine. It's we'll talk about the jugs machine. This is the way you talk about a Xerox machine or Kleenex. Yeah. It's like it's the jugs machine, no matter who makes it. He said, and he shot the ball out of the jugs machine, and he sprinted down the field, and he caught the pass that he shot out of the machine. And people talked about how crazy that was, and I'm sure that came up in that Bruce Feldman article. And he said, well, he only did it that one time, and he only did it because the guys who made the machine were there. And Tim May said, was that crazy? Was that crazy to watch that video? And Marvin Harrison starts answering about, like that machine can do amazing stuff. And Tim's like, no, you being able to run. It's just, oh yeah, I mean that too, I guess. Just
that's normal.
Yeah.
I guess that's what makes him the number 2 freak. It's like, what? No, this is just who I am.
Yeah, it's like, oh, can people not do that?
Well, you can't do that? Couldn't be me.
How many of your hamstrings would you blow out even attempting that? Coming 25 yards short of being able to attempt that.
The football better just go straight up.
One other question he was asked, do you know what the number of single-season touchdowns is? Single-season record for touchdown receptions for an Ohio State player. Do you know the answer?
Is it 17, Terry Glenn?
It is 17 by Terry Glenn. Marvin Harrison did not know that. However, Marvin Harrison probably going to get closer to the record than you. So who's coming out ahead in this deal? It's impossible to say. But Marvin Harrison said, well, that's a lot, but somebody's going to do it. So
15 games.
Yeah, I mean it is a lot, and based on his pace from his last game, he's on pace to score 45 touchdowns. So
would be a record.
That's just math. What is the key to scoring touchdowns in the red zone? He said, ball skills number one, but need a good quarterback, which he may have both of those things this fall. Another wide receiver who may have number one, have some ball skills. Number two, have a good quarterback, Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is very, very close friends with C.J. Stroud. They are very, very good friends. He said that's something that really, you see on the field too. Like that's something that really benefits them on the field because they know each other very, very well. He said, I know what he likes, I know what he doesn't like, and just that's one of those things that I feel like we talk about roommates a lot, like to the point that it's almost kind of like a running joke. But when you know someone that well, and you're that's someone who is probably first on your list to call to go throw, and that's how you build up chemistry. That's how you build up just knowing what the other person's going to do before they do it.
Here's a concern, though, because I'm with you, the roommates thing. It's something we talk about every year. The thing that I have noticed when talking to players and they talk about teammates that they're close with, they're always like, we used to be roommates, because everybody can afford to live alone now. This is the downfall. This is why NIL should have been banned, because now that chemistry is no longer there and people get to be able to afford to live on their own, human people.
You know who doesn't live alone?
Who?
Bradley Robinson. Do you know who he lives with? It's not someone on the team.
Okay. Who?
His parents.
Well, there you
Parents.
go.
He got a 2-bedroom apartment, and his parents come down for weekends and all that stuff. And rather than just paying for a hotel, they just got a 2-bedroom apartment. So his parents crash at his place. That's how they share books and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was another kind of interesting.
Well,
little.
they're in the same age range.
Not sure that's exactly how parenting works. It doesn't matter. We're not here to talk about parenting. We're here to talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba. And does he feel pressure this year? And he gave a Brian Hartline quote, and he didn't had the wording exactly right, but it was pressure is a great opportunity because it's better than no pressure. And so what is the expectation? Why is there pressure at Ohio State? They haven't won a national championship since 2014, and he said anything below the national title, the Natty, was the exact quote. Anything below the Natty is not acceptable.
That's the correct attitude you need if your goal is to do that. So yeah, it's as long as the work gets put in to kind of prove that. I think back to after that Clemson loss, the entire year, kind of the 2020 season, whenever they'd show footage of workouts or whatever, it's like there was some sort of Clemson lean to it. And then we saw that actualized the next time they played them. So yeah, I mean, last year was not, there's a lot of bitter taste to a lot of things that happened last year. So for a lot of these guys, it's their last chance to make everything right and to have that national championship dream realized.
Well, I had one more note, and you can think about if you have anything else to add. But last I had to talk to Parker Fleming, who had an update on Parker Lewis. And the update on Parker Lewis is he can practice, but he's still not been cleared. They're still waiting on the NCAA thing. And it was the same thing as was the case last year with Paula Ienaoteote, who he was practicing, but they weren't didn't have him repping with the ones or even the twos a lot of times, because you didn't know, is he going to get cleared? Is he going to be cleared for game one? If he's not cleared for game one, you don't want him taking reps that other guys are going to be taking, so you feel like it's maybe going to leave him a little behind. That's probably a little bit less true at the kicking position. He said, he can practice, and we saw him coming off the field. I saw him last night after practice coming in. So yes, he is out there, but he said you gotta have contingency plans. So it feels like they probably have, Parker Lewis is, if Parker Lewis is cleared, turn to page 41, and if Parker Lewis is not cleared, turn to page 17. It's just choose your own adventure on the special teams until the NCAA gets off their butts and makes a decision, which is like, why is this what is it specifically about USC that creates these issues over and over again?
And will it change once they get into the Big Ten? Can there be some, the right hand and the left hand knowing what they're doing? I don't want to offend anybody, especially any specialists or specialist families watching, but a choose your own adventure book about kickers, you're going to have a hard time with the publisher with that one. I'm just a suggestion. So if you're already like halfway through it, maybe revisit.
I've already spent my advance, so should I not?
You can't advance yourself, Tom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anything else that you had from your? Because we were different tables, so we kind of talked to different people at different times.
Talking to Xavier Johnson, I asked him, like, you're working in the slot right now, and he's like, yes, but everybody's working everywhere, so he can play wherever. And Jaden Ballard was saying, like, yeah, I know X now, but if I can, they can play anywhere, and you're going to see them all move around, and that's how you're going to be able to get everybody on there. Like, there won't be like, well, we can't play a Mecca because Jackson's in. It's like there's none of that. Everybody knows all of the positions. Talk to him. He talked to Tony Alford about, like, if you need me, like, what just I'm here. And I asked him, like, talking about the Tony Alford thing from 2 weeks ago, where I said, Tony, if you went to him today and said, we need you to come back to running back, what would he do? And Tony said that when do you need me? Where do you need me? Let's work extra. So I asked Xavier, like, why are you like that? And he just said, like, this team is so close that he would do it for them. Wouldn't think about it, wouldn't hesitate, would obviously need to see some film and things like that. And it's like I would have the playbook, I'd be doing extra, taking notes, I'd have the iPad at all times. And it's just talk about the closeness of this team. It's special, and so that's why he would have no problem doing that. I asked a couple people about Caleb Brown, freshman receiver that I'm just gonna harp on, and we may not really see any of him this year, but he did lose his black stripe in 12 practices, which is pretty impressive. But the thing that everybody was telling me is just he came in, worked immediately, always head down. Xavier said that he actually got dinged up. Caleb Brown got hurt a little in the summer and was still able to bounce back and in time to have a strong camp. Parker Fleming said that he's one of those guys that will do anything that you ask. He always shows up on film, no matter what it is. He always does something on film. And everybody, in talking to CJ Stroud 2 weeks ago or whatever, everybody's raving about him. The problem is he's a freshman. He's a true freshman. And Brian Hartline said of the true freshman that it's going to take a while. But certainly he is doing a lot of the right things. It's just the consistency is what freshmen need. And that's why it takes them until November, to really start seeing some time in a rotation.
Yeah, and the other problem is you've got 6 to 7 guys ahead of you, and all of those guys, okay, all you have to do is jump ahead of Cam Babb, which, you've heard people talk about Cam Babb, or Xavier Johnson. You've heard people talk about Xavier Johnson, or Jaden Ballard, or it's there are no schlubs in that room, so you've got to really, that is a hard climb to get up that depth chart, even to the 5th, 6th spot.
Even Chris Olave needed an injury to Austin Mack, if I recall. So it just, the more you have, the better, but you might be waiting a little bit.
One more thing that Brian Hartline mentioned was, he was asked about Emeka Egbuka on special teams and why he's so good as a kick returner. Hartline said, it's all the same stuff that makes you a good route runner. It's the same, your body language says, I'm going this way, and in fact, you're going the other way. The same things that work that make you make a cornerback turn his hips the wrong way. Same thing that makes the coverage guy start going the wrong way, and then all of a sudden, yes, he's quick, yes, he's shifty, yes, he's explosive, but it's just all the same little detail things that make him such a good route runner, make him such a good kick returner.
And Tom, let me ask you this. When I asked Emeka, are you going to take a return all the way back this year? What do you think his answer was, yes or no?
I'm going to guess he said yes.
And he did, and I said, well, what game? And he said, hopefully the first kickoff return that I get in that Notre Dame game. And,
How many points did you give him for that bold prediction?
That's a one-pointer because he's really, really good. Also, one last thing, Cameron Martinez talking to Parker Fleming about something we talked about with Cameron Martinez as the backup punt returner to Jackson Smith-Njigba, a guy who grew up with the football in his hands. And I asked Parker Fleming, how often does he bother you about returning punts and getting the football in his hands? He's like, does he bother me? It's like, no, not annoy you. But how often is he asking you or telling you that I need to do this? And he said every day, bothering him every day about being back there because he just wants to do something, wants to do anything. And we've seen that with him in the nickel, him at corner, and those are the kind of guys you win with. You need those guys that will do whatever it takes, whatever you ask, because they just want to help.
And that's, that's kind of ties together the Xavier Johnson thing. The Xavier Johnson, Cam Martinez, kind of different guys. Xavier Johnson came to Ohio State as a walk-on. He had scholarship offers. He had an offer from Iowa State and a couple other FBS programs. Chose to walk on at Ohio State, earned a scholarship. Cam Martinez, kind of the opposite end of the recruiting spectrum, where he was the player of the year in Michigan and very highly sought after. But same thing. Number one, it's hard to break into the lineup, and number two, guys just want to do whatever they can do to be a part of the conversation, be a part of the team this year. They're going to do it. Boy, it is just starting to feel a little bit real as we're getting ready to walk out of here. It is practically game week. I went, as we were sitting waiting for interviews, I sat down and made a list of show by show, all the shows leading up to the game. It's like, boy, there's not that many shows left before the Notre Dame game. There's going to be a lot to talk about. We will have our usual game week media availabilities Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Next week, we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about before then. We're talking maybe doing a live episode of Buckeye Weekly before then. We're going to get into our game week mode, which means Michigan Monday. We're going to have our bold prediction shows, game previews, national previews, all that good stuff. That's all coming up in the next 9 days. It's getting real close. Did I screw up the countdown on yesterday's show because I was quickly putting something in my phone to throw just kind of basic notes? Listen, I don't know. I'm not here to talk about the past, Tony.
That's why I suggest you be like, the Notre Dame game is in 6 to 7 days. And you deal with a question mark type of and that way, because I mean, it's tomorrow morning, but we're recording now live. I mean, it's yesterday when tomorrow is.
That's true. And we didn't get a chance to talk to Jesse Mirko. Otherwise, I would have probably had a lot more information about the international dateline. But we did not get a chance to talk to him. So that's all right. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk to him later on. But he is, one of many players on the team who had a pretty good last year, and you get the sense could be a little more this year, and a lot of everyone you talk to, same 3 goals come up: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. They are we have seen these teams focus before. Seems like they are very much in that boat again as well. Lots of interesting, fun stuff to tell you about. I am frantically trying to look up Alex Gleitman's new podcast name, which I do not remember. I subscribed to it and it hasn't shown up for me yet.
In the Huddle?
In the Huddle, yes. In the Huddle. Alex Gleitman, one of our great recruiting analysts. He had on our old buddy Brett Ciancia from Pick 6 Previews to talk about the season, kind of national picture, preview Ohio State a little bit. Make sure you check out In the Huddle. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's showing up in some of the new places. He just dropped his first episode. You can just search Buckeye Huddle. That will get you all of our shows: Buckeye Weekly, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, Big Meat Kickoff, and now In the Huddle with Alex Gleitman. I guess we're going to even have maybe even a few more podcasts coming as the season comes along, because as we were talking beforehand, no one ever seems to complain like you guys do too many shows around the season time, because I think there's a little bit of excitement around Ohio State football.
I complain.
Well, yes, no one that matters complains. So yeah, we will have plenty of podcast content coming your way this week, next week, as we head into that Notre Dame game, and then all throughout the fall. Should be a fun year, and a fun place to check out all of that stuff will be at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That is, we have a very active and fun community. Very, very. I mean, that board is humming for. I keep thinking we just launched that site like a week ago, and boy, it is the community is really, really buzzing. Obviously, a lot to be excited about, so it makes sense. But check that out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.